going on, everybody? Nerd Enthusiast Wrestling Podcast. I am Chris T. Francesco. Joined with me, as always, is Kyle Barone. What's going on, man?
Not much. How you doing?
I'm doing the best I can, man. This is still trying times, but...
It's all we can do.
Yeah, we're making the best of it. You're over here literally working dawn to dusk.
Yeah.
So today we are going to discuss the Montreal Screwjob from 1997. I believe that occurred November 9th. So right around the Survivor Series era. And before we do that, real quick, Kyle, I kind of want to ask your opinion on what we saw on AEW last night.
First off, I want to say rest in peace to Pat Patterson.
Oh my gosh, that was tough.
A monster loss for the wrestling community.
Mm-hmm.
Without him, we wouldn't have my favorite match to Royal Rumble. That was his idea.
I agree.
If you talk to anybody in the wrestling business, they say his mind backstage is next to none. He's brilliant with things he did, and first Intercontinental Champion. The Rock credits him with his career. It's
Brett and Shawn credit him for a lot.
Brett and Shawn, yeah. Like basically after he stopped wrestling, he was Vince's right hand man for a long time. And a lot of people don't know that if you just watch wrestling and don't listen to stuff, you'll know him as part of the Stooges, when Austin used to whip his ass, and it was great.
Mm-hmm.
But what you didn't know is he and Briscoe backstage had a lot of pull and a lot of insight. So rest in peace to a pioneer and an icon in the wrestling business.
Yeah, and Kyle didn't have anything in front of him. He literally just came up and And the great thing about Pat, and a lot of people have to realize, a lot of the greatest finishes in some matches that we've ever seen is Pat Patterson.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people say Patterson was known as the finish guy.
Yeah.
Brett and Shawn credit him a lot for that. Steve Austin has come out and said many times that Pat was the guy that they went to for good finishes. So also with Pat, he is the first openly gay pro wrestler of all time. So credit him for that. I think he also wrote a book about it a couple years ago. So definitely check that out on Amazon.
Yeah, I think it was after his partner passed away.
Yes,
right?
so like a long time. Mm-hmm. All right, so getting out of that whole sad little moment there, because it was a monumental loss for the wrestling industry. Last night, the 61-year-old Sting coming back to TNT for the first time since March of 2001. And I don't know if you knew this, but Pro Wrestling Tees announced that it was the highest selling shirt in their history in less than 24 hours.
No shit.
Yep. So his merch, 61 years old,
flies
off, man.
It just goes to show you what those legends, just put their name on a shirt and it's out the door.
People wonder why Vince brings Goldberg back.
Yeah. And I always hear his merch sells too.
Yeah,
and it's like, there's nothing crazy about it. It just says Goldberg with the tribal shit and it flies out the door. It's like, bring him back. Don't put a title on him.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Don't let him just, squash up and come.
The Fiend and Kevin Owens. Yeah. So.
Yeah, please don't do that. But, it was pretty huge, man. From what we know, it was announced literally right after his, I guess, debut on AEW. He signed a multi-year full-time deal. Nobody knows if it's anything to do with matches. I'm assuming it's not. The guy said he has spinal stenosis. He's 61 years old.
Yeah.
I would assume they're going to use him at some point as a managerial role.
He's with Darby Allin.
I assume that's what it's going to be if you watched it last night. But look, I think it's a great move for AEW. It's a great namesake. He's got a lot of history there. What they do with him is another thing. He's a good promo. I think they're going to do with him that WWE missed a boat on, which was let him be on TV more. And it's once a week. It's not 5 different shows a week. So
it's not house shows.
Right. So he's going to be able to be there, as often as possible. So that's great for AEW. I'm excited. I'm a big Sting guy. So also Kenny Omega winning the AEW title for Jon Moxley.
Time.
Yeah, that's about a year for
and if you guys have listened to this, I've been saying from the door they should have put the belt on him. If not, he should have put it on Jericho and 2 months later put it on Omega. He's one of the top 5 in the world in the ring. He's so good. Build your company around that guy and have these quote unquote, the WWE guys chase him.
Right.
You know, so if you guys know Dean Ambrose is now John Moxley or Jericho or Swagger, Hager, whatever, these guys are leaving WWE and coming to AEW and losing to a guy we don't know.
Yeah.
So that would make me be like, well, I got to watch this guy. And I forget, I think it was Samoa Joe or someone talked about how TNA fucked up when Kurt Angle came there.
Yeah.
So Samoa Joe's murdering people, and now the ex-WWE guy comes and beats him first time out.
Yeah.
So now it's like, why would I want to watch your TV show if the guy who's not with the company I love is beating their top guy?
Right.
Well, I've already seen him.
Correct.
So with Omega, should have been pushed to the moon from the door. That's just my opinion, you know.
I agree.
So
have him as a champ and have the other WWE guys chase him.
Chase him, yeah. And then eventually, if one of them beats him, then one of them beats him. But have him beat a couple guys, you know, and build your company around
one of your own.
Yeah, one of your own.
I agree. 100%.
Granted, he's Japan. No one's really one of their own. But you know what I mean. It's not. You didn't. They built it around Jericho. Understandably named, but you built it around Jericho. Then you gave it to Ambrose. You know, so
sets you up good there.
Yeah.
We're not like WWE. We're on alternative. That your champions are WWE. All right, so to today's topic, it is the Montreal Screwjob. We're not going to cover the entire pay-per-view. We're just going to cover the actual Screwjob because it's been in the news lately because it was the 23rd anniversary just about a month ago, a little less than a month ago now. So basically, you know, people have argued about whether or not Brett, you know, got screwed for over two decades now. And while I respect the opinion of the opposite side, I've always been on Vince's side here in terms of, you know, Brett screwed Brett. You know, there's a way to do business, and he didn't do it the right way. And I'm talking about he being Brett, pronouns pal. There are always going to be personal issues, I believe, in the wrestling business with that many egos running around in one area. However, people and wrestlers, they put that aside for what's best for the company. Just watch any documentary with The Undertaker.
I was just about to say that. Listen to The Undertaker.
Exactly.
Giant Gonzalez.
Yes. You know, they put what's best, they put aside their own egos and what's best for the company as a whole. And I didn't think ever, from what we know, Brett just didn't want to do that at all. He was on his way out, and he wanted only what was best for him, not the company that had given him a good living for about 13 years at the time. To me, Bret Hart has always been looked at as the victim of the Montreal Screwjob. 20 years later, I still look at him as the cause of it.
Yeah, like, I get both sides of it. I understand why Bret didn't want to, because he hated Shawn.
Yeah.
And they put their differences aside. If you watch, those two hated each other, but when you watch their matches, they put it aside in the ring, and they got the job done in the ring, because all their matches are great. I understand why he didn't want to drop it to Shawn because he hated him, and I understand why Vince wanted to get the belt off him. Bret's dates in the company, he had already exceeded him.
Yeah.
Technically, he could have not even shown up that night.
Right.
And just been like, what did Medusa do?
Exactly.
And I know Bruce talked about this and said, well, no, that wasn't weighing on us. Bullshit. You see Medusa take your title and drop it in a trash can. Now, Bret could take that belt and go right on TNT and say, fuck this. This is where I'm at now.
Yep.
And, yeah, we all know you're going to have another belt made, and, you know, you'll do a number one contender, whatever. But it's still, that was your last champ.
Yeah.
He left with the belt.
Right.
So, in some fans' point of view, it'd be like, well, no, Michaels is now the champ, but he never beat the champ.
Right.
So now going forward, it's that old, well, you never beat him, he just left.
Correct.
So Vince was protecting the business. He was protecting
the future,
his property. So I understand why. And on both sides, they should have just came to a fucking agreement, you know.
Agree.
And
I agree.
It's like Bret screwed himself, but like the one guy in the company he didn't want to drop it to in his hometown. The one guy, you're like, nope, that's where we're going. You know what I mean? Like, okay, I get it. Then.
It was also Vince swinging his sword a little bit.
Yeah, it was. Oh, it was him 100% his ego being like, this is what you're fucking doing.
Exactly.
You know?
Because at the end of the day, you know, this isn't Ted Turner's, you know, just dropping the bucket company. This is Vince's company. It was then, it is now.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, Brett's leaving, so why should he bend over backwards
Right.
for you? You know, like you're leaving my company. Why should I do you any fucking favors?
Yeah.
You go out the way I want you to go out.
Exactly.
You know, so
It's just do the
you
favors.
do the favors for the guy.
Like, what's it matter to you? You're leaving.
You're
Who
leaving.
cares who you're
What do
dropping
you
it to?
care? Yeah.
Exactly.
So you had no problem dropping it the next night to whoever else.
Right.
So
if he said Shawn Monday night,
yeah,
what are you gonna
or
do then?
if I was Vince, I'd have been like, "You're dropping it to Doink on Monday. Go fuck yourself. Go have fun taking that steam to WCW. You know, at least you're losing it to the top guy.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. And so here's my breakdown, and we'll
Poor
go from
Doink, man. I fucking trashed that guy, and I'm a fan. I like it.
there. Let's just change like Ahmed Johnson. or
Ahmed,
something.
yeah.
So there's no need for me to walk you guys through the history blow by blow. Probably every wrestling fan who has followed the genre for more than a year, if that, they know the gist of the Montreal Screwjob. So it's one of the most, maybe not one of the most, I think it is the most pivotal, defining moment in not only probably the history of WWF, not of wrestling, because I still put the NWO ahead of that of all time, but this was real. Like, this is something that was not scripted. I don't care what anybody says. It wasn't a work. Bret Hart almost had a heart attack 15 times of stress because of moments like this.
And all the people that want to keep saying it's a work, as much shit as Bret Hart has talked over the past 20 years, he would have said it was a work.
Absolutely.
There's no, so why would he keep that a secret going to WCW?
Exactly.
You know,
Yeah,
it was not a,
for sure. And anyone who pays attention to Bret knows it was not a work.
No, it was.
So I definitely, in terms of like shock moments, I'd put it right up there. I think that's probably the number one, and number two would be the Undertaker streak ending. That's the only two that I can think of, like just straight out shock moments. And obviously, when it happened in '97, I didn't understand it. But when you obviously years and years later, you realize, my God, it was literally a mob hit.
Yeah,
that's what it was in a pro wrestling term. So it's one of those rare moments that truly like marks time. You know, there was the area before Montreal, and then there was the era after. When you look at it that way. So what happened as a result created, the proverbial shockwave that pulled WWF out of the ratings gutter and eventually, toppled WCW. After all, it was the moment of conception for the Mr. McMahon character, and it was the progenitor for the amazingly stupid Starrcade '97 finish. Because that's when they used Bret for the first time.
Yeah.
So, the former gave the WWF the big push they needed to take off like a rocket, aided, of course, by a little-known superstar named Steve Austin's, prolific rise. And the latter was enough to convince a sizable portion of WCW's fan base that their preferred choice had jumped the shark and a better alternative was out there. Montreal was massive when you look at really what happened directly after that. And then not only that, but when Montreal happened, your top guy at the time was still Shawn Michaels. And you talk about nuclear heat on top of the nuclear heat
that he already had.
Yeah. So that begs the question that we're getting into the meat here is, like, who's to, like, credit for all of this? And what I mean is not the blame. Who gets, like, the credit? Hindsight is always 20/20, they say. But you know what else is true? To the victor go the spoils, right?
You know who's the credit if you talk to him, bro. We're at McMahon's pool, bro. That guy, Vince Russo, takes credit for it.
I agree.
Jim.
And like you were just saying, Barone, is it's funny that you brought up Russo, bro. Is that Russo in his book mentioned that it was his genius idea to come up with the screw job, and then you were just telling me right before we hop back into this that Cornette said this was done a lot,
like 60 years ago or so. Yeah, it was, and Cornette's like as much of a douchebag as he can be.
Yeah.
He's a wrestling historian. He knows everything about everything that's ever happened. So I don't doubt that they were sitting there and Cornette threw out the idea. He's like, why don't we just screw him and take the title from him? I don't know if the whole sharpshooter put the sharpshooter on him, and I don't know where that came from, but I don't think Russo came up with it. If you look at the body of work he's come up with and the garbage compared to the good stuff, the garbage highly outweighs the good stuff.
I agree.
So.
It's amazing where he still rips creative all up and down. I'm like, dude, like, You had like two good. One, let's not forget the fact of the talent that he had to work with.
Yeah, it's
He had Austin, Rock, Triple
like,
H.
hey,
Austin,
Rock, cut a promo.
HBK.
Look how great I am at booking this. Like, come on.
No.
You know?
I mean, I give him credit for Goldust. Goldust, I can give him all the credit for in the world. So, you know, we can lament over and over about the Screwjob, and you can pick your heroes and you can pick your villains, but, you know, that's purely an academic debate. The fact is, when we look at it, Vince did it and Vince won.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're honest with yourself, you'd admit you'd rather have the WWF in power than the three-ring circus of WCW.
Yeah.
You know,
And look where their careers went. So
right.
Michaels went on to be the top guy, main event WrestleManias. Yeah, he got hurt, but he came back and had another great career. Bret, before Goldberg kicked him in the head, he was a shell of himself. He just didn't care.
He didn't care. He was collecting that nice paycheck.
Yeah.
Like all of them were.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So.
No, I agree that when you look, the directions of both guys are vastly different.
Yeah.
But no, that's a great point. And, you know, one of those two were going to go out of business, right? And we know that. It was a nuclear arms race, and it coincided with a bubble of, you know, the pro wrestling popularity that was always destined to burst. There wasn't going to be a loser takes the silver here. It was a Game of Thrones win or die scenario type thing. You know, Vince won, and he won because of Montreal, I think. And so who do we credit? The way I see it, there, you know, are quite a few, you know, individuals that you can point the finger and say, if it wasn't for this, you know, the Montreal Screwjob would never have happened. And the first person, and, you know, Barone said it right at the top, actually, when we started this conversation, at the top of that list, man, it has to be Medusa.
Yeah.
And I look at, you know, she set the whole thing in motion on December 18th, 1995, almost 2 whole years before the Screwjob, mind you. You know, Alundra Blaze was the WWF Women's Champion. She appeared on WCW Monday Nitro. Her contract with WWF had expired. And then when she showed up on Nitro as Medusa, she showed up with the WWF Women's title belt.
So back then, women's wrestling wasn't anywhere near what it was today.
No.
To be quite honest with you, I don't think I ever watched. I don't remember any women's wrestling from when I was a kid. None
Same.
of it. I remember the managers, and that was it. So Medusa doing this with the women's wrestling not being popular still made a wave. So what would Bret Hart, your top guy with the belt, do?
Right.
If someone that no one really cared about did it and it made headlines. Mm-hmm. Imagine if Bret did it.
Oh my gosh, that's basically, and that's what I was going to go into is, you know, even though it was just, you know, quote unquote the women's title, and it's clear the WWF didn't care much about the belt, or, you know, they would have, you know, paid more attention to the actual champion. It was still a tremendous embarrassment to the WWF on live television, and it was an embarrassment that Vince McMahon was going to refuse to let repeat.
Yeah.
And that was basically what got the wheels in motion to even think about the Screwjob. So when Bret was on his way to WCW as champion, you know, the champion, and refused to surrender the title under the numerous different plans that Vince gave him that we know for a fact. You know, Bruce Pritchard's talked about, you know, Bret even said he would drop it to the Brooklyn Brawler at the Garden.
Which he wouldn't have done, but
no, of course he would not. He would have found another reason to get out of that.
Yeah.
You know, Vince's memories of 1995 and Medusa really came back to him. And if Alundra Blaze Medusa hadn't done what she done, cooler heads might have prevailed in Montreal, but we obviously never know.
Yeah.
Really
kind of glad they didn't, because
so the next person that you can kind of point to is Shawn Michaels. He's the only guy to have 2 separate Hall of Fame careers. Sure, guys like Ric Flair had her in 2 different rings, but Michaels had 2 different careers. Had he stayed retired in 1998, he would have been inducted probably in 2004, 2005. Instead, he came back, and if you only consider the body of work he gave us from 2002 to 2010, that alone wasn't amazing enough to warrant a Hall of Fame induction twice. Mm-hmm. That's how incredible, you know, HBK is. However, he was also, at least in the 90s, a grade A jerk off.
And he'll be the first person to tell you.
Yeah, and that's really awesome when you do hear him say all the time, like, look, in the 90s, I would have literally fired myself 1,000 times.
Yeah, he was a different. Like Orton talks about it too, how much he was a jerk off.
Yeah.
Back in the
You
day.
know, he was arrogant, he was brash, he was immature, he definitely felt entitled. You know, he was extroverted where Hart was 100% introverted. He was showy where Hart was calculated. He was frenetic where Hart was methodical.
He was entertaining
He
where
was exciting
where Hart was technical in ring wrestler.
Right.
He's an old school wrestler.
Yeah, I'm not sitting here and I'm going to tell you that Brett was like a Ford Taurus. I'm not going to say that. I don't know what kind of car Brett was, but HBK was a Ferrari at that point.
Yeah,
living fast and on top. Like he was just the man. And you know, he drove Brett insane, and it makes me laugh because I feel really bad for the guy now, 20-some years later, for Brett. And you know, since HBK was Vince's like current quote unquote, you know, teacher's pet, there was nothing Brett could do about it.
Yeah, and a lot of guys have said like Shawn Michaels is the only person that could talk to Vince the way he did back then.
And Vince has said before, he's the last person to ever talk to me like that again.
He was that good, and you needed that guy in the ring because he made other guys look good. You know, it wasn't just him doing his thing. He was, you know, he could put over guys while beating them.
Yeah. And, you know, Michaels could fake a knee injury, skip a WrestleMania, and suffer no repercussions.
None.
He could do implicitly what Hart did, refuse to drop the belt clean to a guy he didn't like and get away with it where Hart did not. If Michaels had been the HBK of 2007, let's just say, he might not have made Bret Hart so sour, and Hart might have been happy to just drop the belt to him and then boom, gone.
Yeah.
After all, Hart offered to drop the WWF title to Austin or Bulldog or Mankind or Ken Shamrock or even Undertaker. Just nobody
No, yeah.
but HBK. And it's because, you know, and it's true, and Baron and I have talked about it, HBK was just not a good dude back then.
No, he was a drug addict, an alcoholic. He was, you know, living fast, out every night, doing whatever he wanted. And like we just said, Vince let him do it. Let him get away with it. Yeah. There was no repercussions for anything he did outside of the ring. So why change? You're getting paid. You're on last. You're the top guy. You got the belt. And you're doing whatever the fuck you want and talking to the boss however you want. So why change anything?
I know. And now we're getting to the back end here of this show, and that's what we're going to start doing, is doing like 25, 30-minute shows to get you guys all the information to not have to stop and press pause and come back to it. We want to get you guys with our opinions and what we're talking about quick and easy. The next guy you got to credit, obviously, is Vince McMahon. I mean, obviously, right? Who ordered the bell to ring? Who was the guy that made the call to go through with the screw job?
And everything starts and ends with him anyway. So
you know, who gave Brett the contract that would essentially have him set for life, a main event career?
Didn't he offer him like a 20-year contract?
Deal. Yeah. Jeez. And basically, it would have ended with him becoming like Vince's next, like Pat Patterson.
Yeah.
You know, speaking of Pat,
because Brett was like what, roughly around like 30,
40?
38, 40. Yeah. Okay, so he's 40. So he's not going to wrestle until he's 60.
Right.
You know, he would have wrestled probably 5 years, maybe, and then been that backstage guy or whatever. You know, that was a contract like, please just don't go to WCW. Here's, you know, I mean, in hindsight, he should have fucking signed it.
I agree. You know, he reneged on the deal, something he never would have tolerated had he been on the receiving end. But, you know, it's his company. You know, who encouraged Brett to go to WCW when he decided he could no longer afford to pay the top star and the main event guy who kept the company afloat after Hogan, you know, just got up and left the post-steroid era. You know, Vince is the guy who he thought could strong-arm Brett into doing just about anything he wanted. And look, but that's just, I don't necessarily want to paint in a picture of, oh, he only asked Brett and made him do that. Look, as awful as Shawn Michaels was, you know, Vince always said, look, you know, he would fight, scratch, and claw and flip out. But at the end of the day, if I said, no, Shawn, this is what we're doing, Shawn did it. That's the screw job. Yeah. You know, do what you're going to do, and I'll tell you no matter how much you hate it or whatever. You know, to me, it's Vince is the guy that had a decision to make, and I don't think that was what he wanted to do,
It's definitely not what he wanted to
I
do.
don't even think he was convinced to do it. I think he just figured, I have nothing else
He has
to
nothing
do.
else to do.
I have
Yeah.
a pay-per-view, and at the time, 97, it was the hottest thing in the world at the time of a WWE pay-per-view.
Yeah.
So it's like, what do you do here?
Mm-hmm.
He wouldn't even agree to like a schmoz finish. It's like, I outright have to win in Montreal.
Yeah, I'm just not losing to him.
Yeah.
And if you look at Vince's track record, like, oh, it's your hometown, you're fucking losing. You know what I mean? That's what he does.
Yeah. And so when you look at Vince, it just goes into like the last person you got to credit or blame now. And this is just my opinion. And
Seth Rollins, that motherfucker. Talk to Brett. It's the reason.
you know, and the last one to credit or blame is Brett. You know, based on multiple testimonies, you know, Bret Hart had a strong suspicion that something like the screw job would happen. You know, that's like Kennedy rolling into Dallas and saying, you know, I got this bad feeling.
Yeah. And then being convinced to be in a convertible.
Right. A screw job of that magnitude had not, you know, been seen since, you know, the 1985, I think it was Wendy Richter and Moolah double cross. It was unthinkable, it was unfathomable, and yet Brett knew he had put Vince in such a position that it was only a mere possibility, but he knew it was likely, and you still didn't. I mean, if you knew it was likely, I'm thinking of this, if Brett knew that this was likely going to happen, you wrote in your book 100 times how you would just go up to Vince and talk to him. Why would you not just approach him about it?
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing.
I'm guessing he thought that there was no talking to him. He's got it. Vince has it in his mind.
Yeah.
I'm out of here, so he's not going to change for me.
Right. And, you know,
And he shouldn't have. Like I said, this was his last WWF appearance, and like everyone says, you lose on your way out. And granted, he said, "Yeah, I'll lose the next night." Like, no, you're going to lose when I tell you to lose.
Exactly.
You're not beating my top guy just to drop it the next night, and then I'm going to put it on Shawn anyway.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So, in the fans' minds, Brett's already beat the new top guy.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
not even guaranteeing he would show up to Raw the next night.
Yeah,
he wasn't contractually obligated.
He wasn't contractually to be there like a month before.
Right.
You know,
Right. You know, he had talked.
Which is Vince's fault.
That's definitely on Vince. That's not something that's brought up a lot. That's a good point. That's on Vince there to kind of walk that fine line there. You know, Brett talked to Earl Hebner beforehand.
I feel horrible for him. He's the
me
one.
Too.
Even when he talks about it now, he starts to like tear up about how he was such good friends with Brett, and he was stuck in a do this or you're fired, and he has a family, so.
Oh, for sure. You know, he even went over shoot holds with the British Bulldog and his brother Owen, and, you know, was warned not to put himself in any position that might lead to a fast count or a sudden bell ring. Well, that happened. You know, he was prepared, I guess, in hindsight. He was on guard. He was the, what are you doing allowing yourself to be put into a submission hold? Like, that's another thing. If I'm Brett, why am I coming up with the idea of, I'm going to put you in my submission hold?
Yeah.
Like, to me, it's like sets everything up for Vince. It sets everything up for Shawn. You know, if you know they're going to screw you, and you've already talked about not being put in a vulnerable position, why would you let someone put you in your own submission hold in the middle of the ring? Yeah, I just think Brett screwed Brett. And
well, you know what he could have done, now that I'm thinking about it? If Brett would have agreed to losing, get super kicked, 1, 2, 3, and pop right up, no sell and walk out.
Oh, absolutely. That's the best thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's more of a slap in the face than him smashing cameras off. You know what I mean? Like, they just cut the pay-per-view.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, we got all that good footage. It's not like that was live.
No, it was not.
So if you lose 1, 2, 3 with your... Dude, look at the camera. Why do you know what I mean? Like, you could have been smarter about it to be a jerk.
Was the motion of WCW live?
I don't know. It's not on the network. None of that shit's on the network now. Which it should be. Everyone knows it. Like, that's the best part. That's why you want to go see that.
Exactly. And he does it backwards, too.
Yeah. I can't remember if it was live or not, but...
I'll have to go see.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's good. But that, you know, that's our coverage of the screw job. I'm sure down the line when
there's another thing afterwards where he said he knocked Vince out in the locker room, and Brett always says like when he reached down, he thought to himself, 14 years. I've given myself to you for 14 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the only reason anyone knows who Bret Hart outside of Calgary is because of Vince McMahon.
Exactly.
So Vince gave you 14 years. Mm-hmm. Again, it's on both sides, but it's like the egos. Brett's like, I've given you 14 years of my life. And Vince is like, I put you on TV for 14 years.
Yep.
So
Yep.
You know what I mean?
And I always go back to this, and I don't care who it pisses off, any wrestling, community thing that we're in on Facebook or anything like that. At the end of the day, whose company is
Exactly. And what he says goes.
it? Exactly. If you don't like it, you got to go do something else then. I mean, it's the same thing if you work for Amazon or Apple. Whose company is it? That's Jeff Bezos' company.
Yeah, right now, a lot of people got to wear masks at their job. If you're like, fuck this, I ain't, well, see you.
Goodbye.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Right. And it's so weird. And, Conrad talks about this all the time, where wrestling falls in this weird bubble. Like, if Amazon or Apple let go of 30 people, people will be like, well, I mean, that's just the pandemic. WWE lets go of 50 people, and it's like they're the scum of the earth.
Yeah.
It's a business.
It's a business. It's a business first.
Exactly.
It's just like any other business, any other form of entertainment. It's a business.
Yeah. This is a live event industry in a year with no live events. People are going to lose their job.
Yeah,
that's the way it is, and it just. But even when you look back now, and you still go back 2020, like I said at the top, I feel bad for Brett, but to me, this was his doing. You just simply do business knowing you're leaving because you got a better deal at WCW, and that you hated Shawn Michaels so much you were willing to literally just erase your 14-year career and not want to put somebody over. Eventually, somebody's going to find out that you don't want to put anybody over. And I wonder if Undertaker even knew that he didn't want to put anybody over. And I never heard Undertaker talk about that because he's always been the kind of guy no, you do the job, you do business first.
Yeah.
And then you worry about your personal issues later. All Brett had to do was business, and everything would have been fine.
Yeah, and he didn't want to. So
exactly.
This was basically the end of his career, if you think about it.
Because 100%.
There's nothing you remember from WCW.
I remember one match he had with Chris Benoit on Nitro, I think it was.
Yeah,
maybe.
and like he had the Goldberg thing, but like everything else was like, I don't think I've ever searched a Bret Hart match in WCW. You know what I mean? Like,
no.
This was basically how he ended his career.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
All right, this has been a Nerd Enthusiast Wrestling Podcast, Montreal Screwjob from November 9th, 1997. Head over to the Nerd Enthusiast brand on YouTube. We're already up over 230 subscribers. Every day we're getting new and new people signing on and committing to this. Definitely go to patreon.com/nerdenthusiast. Check out the tiers that we got. Help support the business we got going on here.
Check out Twitter for giveaways.
Absolutely.
We give away
Facebook
a lot
and Twitter,
of stuff.
they're doing a lot of giveaways, especially for gaming. Gaming's a huge thing this year with the pandemic and 2 brand new systems being released by PlayStation and Xbox. So definitely check them guys out. Matt does an incredible job. Anthony has a great poker podcast or video stream that he does. Apparently, Parks Casino is coming back with gambling. I think poker tournaments.
Yeah,
maybe
I think so.
next month, or I think Anthony said something like that today. But yeah, check out everything. There's something there for everyone. Looking forward to what's coming down the pike. I can't obviously talk about it now because nothing is 100% set in stone. But I might be voicing another podcast about something else down the line for Nerd Enthusiasts at the turn of 2021. But until I get that set in stone, I won't talk about it. But this is always the priority. So for Kyle Barone, I am Christy Francesco. This has been the Nerd Enthusiast Wrestling Podcast, and we will catch you guys down the road. Have a good rest of your week and weekend. Bye-bye.